and you guys thought I couldn't do a clickbaity thumbnail art. I just choose not to use my powers for evil here. But as the thumbnail for today discuss, we're going to be talking about one of the big design flaws that I see with the Battle Royale formula and what it means for developers all trying to chase after Fortnite, Apex Legends, even still PUBG and the like. Now, obviously at this point I shouldn't need to explain what Battle Royale is, but of course, quick primer if you are somehow still, new to this genre. Battle Royale design puts about 60 to 100 players onto the same map, and items and equipment drops are randomly distributed. Some games will allow supply drops to come in to provide advanced weapons. Every few minutes, the map itself will shrink or condense in a random direction, forcing the players to eventually converge onto a singular location. Whoever is the last person standing, they will be the winner, of course. And it has become a very popular genre, growing from the likes of H1Z1, again PUBG, and the like. And it blew up in a major way last year, of course, with Fortnite, and has now become kind of a go-to multiplayer option for AAA developers. We've already seen modes in Battlefield, Call of Duty, and there's probably going to be discussions more about this with later games. And of course, the recent example with Apex Legends originally being Titanfall 3 before Respawn decided to tilt or change things to become Battle Royale. Now, Battle Royale's design is very interesting, and there are people who really like it, and there are people who really don't. Over the weekend, I finally had a chance to play Battle Royale in the form of Apex Legends. We spent about an hour and a half on stream, and then I played a little bit more than that off recording. And it just didn't hook me. And I joked about why this didn't work for me on our Discord channel, and then as I started to think about it more, I realized that this may not be as crazy as I thought. And that is the fact that Battle Royale, in many ways, is simply just a poor man's roguelike, or a lesser roguelike design. And I know that may sound crazy, but as we're going to discuss, you can see a lot of similarities in the Battle Royale formula with some of the issues we see with lesser roguelikes, or ones that try to rise to the heights of games like The Binding of Isaac, Dead Cells, FTL, Spelunky, and so on, and don't quite get there. Now, roguelike design, again, is always built on variance. How many ways you can provide a completely different experience to the player. This can be done by changing the environment, shuffling enemies and power-ups around, and even limiting what can show up on a respective run. The point is that you know the player is going to be returning to this game again and again, and you want to make sure that each run feels different, and more importantly, it feels unique. A problem that lesser roguelikes have is that they don't do enough to change or add variance to the design. So some of them will stay on a fixed map, and maybe will shuffle around certain elements. Instead of going left, you go right. Instead of going right, you go left. Basic items can be moved around, but if you're still dealing with fixed items in terms of the overall development, it means that there's always going to be the top sword, or the top gun, or the top armor to get. And once you get that, it makes the game noticeably easier. It also means that if you don't get access to that stuff, either because it didn't spawn or you couldn't find it, it's going to make the game noticeably more difficult to the point that it may be unwinnable for you at that current run. But again, the beauty about roguelike is that anything can happen. You can have a run where you start off with an amazing piece of gear, or something that comes together literally within the last 5 to 10 minutes of play. But the important point is that in order for roguelike design to work, it needs to allow for all levels and all possible circumstances within that design. And if a game doesn't do that, then it becomes a lesser roguelike. And a lot, again, of the poor roguelikes that we've played and we've certainly have streamed here on the channel have fallen into the same standards or MOs that we see. Many of them will take place either on a fixed map or a very loosely randomized map, As in, let's say we have 4 quadrants or biomes, and all the game does is maybe just shift their position around. It doesn't change what's going on in there, it doesn't change the objectives. It's just saying again that instead of going north, I'm going to go south this time. Many lesser roguelikes will not really change how you play through on each run. Again, if there is only one top tier weapon or gear, then nothing else will matter. Another issue of lesser roguelikes is that no matter how well you play the game or how many times that you go through it, you're still just going through the motions for the most part. And with those descriptions in mind, we can turn our attention to the Battle Royale formula and see where these elements kind of intersect with each other. Battle Royale games will typically, or at least the ones that I've seen, all take place on a static map. That map is hard-coded down to what buildings are going to appear, where a lake is, etc., etc. Any gear that spawns may be randomly distributed, but again, it's still of a basic kind. Higher quality stuff is usually reserved for specific loot chests or supply drops that can appear either at set times during play or in set positions. And of course, the players who go through these games the most know what areas to look for. Again, are you going to explore a random field or a highly dense military base for top tier gear? Again, while the map itself is going to be shuffled based on where that ring kind of encloses on each other, it still doesn't change what you're doing moment to moment. If I pick up an assault rifle on one play and I go northwest, it's going to be the same if I pick up an assault rifle on another play, but I go southeast. And you'll see in a lot of the Battle Royale games, there is a lot of dead time in between, these moments of escalation. These peaks and valleys, I think, are one of the core elements that make this popular. But at the same time, though, it makes things start to be very repetitive. If you are in like the top 10, top 20 of a Battle Royale game, and you don't have like tier 2, tier 3 armor and weapons, chances are it doesn't matter how well you play, somebody is just going to wipe you out. Or in many cases, they're just going to snipe you from 30, 50 feet away, and you would have never seen them coming. Now, moving to Apex Legends, as this is the one I've had the chance to kind of have the most time to study. This is one I do like some of the aspects of it. It's the only Battle Royale game I've played so far that actively limits or designates squads in terms of Battle Royale. Many of the Battle Royale games do have co-op or 3-4 man teams, but Apex Legends is the first one that is the default mode. So you're always going to be partnered up with 2 people. Now this does several things. One, it improves your survivability quite a bit, because with 2 other people, they can provide backup, they can revive you, and if you do die, they can resurrect you after a certain amount of time has passed. It also allows you to learn the game easier. What Respawn did was, despite having an average tutorial, having other players join and provide information via the ping system or just by voice chat opens things up to allowing you to learn how things work. You're not just going to be wandering around on a map, get sniped, and die. If you follow your teammates, you will typically do reasonably well. Probably my best run of Apex Legends was me being in the top 2 squad, and then we were killed at the very end. And I can tell you that that top 2 ranking didn't come from me at all. Another major point that Apex Legends has compared to the other roguelikes, other Battle Royale games, is the fact that you are playing named characters, as you would see in Dota, League, and Overwatch. Now, the transformations or the differences aren't as extreme as in those games. Every character can wield every weapon, but they have a unique passive, special, and ultimate skill. But that does just enough to tweak the gameplay compared to the other Battle Royale games, where again, you are playing the same default character with the same default abilities again and again until the cows come home. And that's another major point about Battle Royale games. And again, getting back to the roguelike comparisons. Many roguelikes will not have any true forms of persistence, whether it is from a knowledge base, as in I am learning how things go so I can mitigate that challenge later on, or from an unlockable standpoint. I unlock a new gun, a new enemy, etc., etc. And part of that, I think, again, goes back to the appeal of Battle Royale games. They're not meant to be 2 to 3 hour long matches, or even just an hour of high stakes play. The condensity of the map, combined with the lack of persistence or outside game impacting elements, streamlines everything that goes on. And that can certainly work. But again, without having a level or amount of variance, it makes these games, for me, start to get very dull fast. Now again, the beauty of other kinds of games that go the esports route is that the difference in characters or play styles greatly changes what's going on in each match. Two people who play as Guile in Street Fighter V or Goku in Dragon Ball FighterZ can have different ways of playing those characters, different team compositions, different combos memorized. One of the beauties of League of Legends and Dota is the very fact that whatever champions you pick greatly not only affect what you do on a match, but your team strategy and the opposing team strategy. That whole meta layer of picks to counter picks and so on and so forth. And that kind of stuff keeps things interesting, and more importantly, it keeps adding variance to how these games play out. Just because we played one match and did X doesn't mean that's going to be the same way each and every time. And typically, the Battle Royale genre has somewhat of a smaller learning curve in that sense. Once you know what are the best weapons and the best strategies to do, you can kind of repeat that for the most part. Again, the shuffling of the map does impact things, but it's not anything a high-level player is going to be slipped up on. But with that said, we're going to move on to some game footage and discuss things a little bit more in terms of how I would like to see a Battle Royale game develop. And my combination is kind of going to be like Team Fortress meets Apex Legends. Which, now that I think about it, someone get Gabe Newell on the phone. In fact, I'm going to give him a call right now, but you guys look at this quick shout out to our Patreon supporters first. Thank you to our Patreon backers, and if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, check out our Discord channel, linked down below. So here we have Apex Legends, and like we said in the last part, there are several things I would like to see that could maybe improve the Battle Royale formula. And the first one is an obvious one. Randomizing up the map. Again, when you're dealing with known areas, even by the fact that the dropship goes to different directions, doesn't change the overall strategy. But either randomly or procedurally generating the map would go a long way towards adding that variance. And again, anything that you can do to change up or upset a standard loadout or strategy ultimately would be better. Now, keeping that in mind, like I said, I like the idea of having these named characters or having unique characters that you can start to have a unique strategy around. But I did prefer something like what we see with Overwatch, or probably even a better example, Team Fortress, where out of the 9 classes, they all have a basic function that is unique from one another, but then that is further refined based on what items you equip. Again, a heavy with one minigun, I don't remember any of their names at the moment, would play a little bit differently than a heavy with another one. And basically, any way that you can add a little bit of customization to the game would help again. Because now it's not just you fighting against how many other players. It's you trying to build a character or having a game plan and seeing how that would engage in the field and as well as with your team. I do like the idea of team-based Battle Royale. I think I prefer that more than the single player. And like I said, I think Apex Legends does do that part the best out of the games that I've seen. But again, because everything is still kept very vanilla, I guess, in terms of the moment-to-moment gameplay, does keep it from becoming too varied. Again, when I start out, we're always going to be looking for like a few common weapons. We may get lucky and get some advanced gear. Speaking of, as a slight tangent, I would love to see it, whoever does the next Battle Royale game and actually comes up with a tutorial, to actually talk about your inventory and equipping accessories to it. Because that's a feature that, if you're not familiar with Battle Royale, it's hard to exactly know what it is you're looking at and what their functionality does. I kind of stumbled on the UI for the inventory during one of our games here. And that is not good. Again, it's not good for onboarding or bringing on new players. But ultimately, this section is going to be, I think, quicker than the last one, because anything that I'm talking about is simply theory crafting at the moment. But I want to throw it to you folks. For the people who like Battle Royale games, what would you like to see improved? And conversely, if you're like me and you don't like Battle Royale, what would get you to play these games? What, or more specifically, what gameplay elements would get you interested? Like I said, for me, it has to be more about roguelike design, adding variance to these plays so that I can have a different play each time, and that's not just about repeating the same basic strategy again and again, which in a weird way is kind of counterintuitive to this whole idea of Battle Royale, which is like 60 to 100 people in a no-holds-bar match. And there shouldn't be repeatable or repetitive elements in that. But with that said, we're going to wrap things up for this video. I'm going to go play one of my favorite Battle Royale games, The Binding of Isaac. And thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to suggest a topic for me to look at in an upcoming video, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Again, we have our Discord and Patreon link down below. But otherwise, come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where you examine the art and science of games. Until next time, have a great night. If you're looking for another book about game design, be sure to check out my first title, 20 Essential Games to Study, out now. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below, where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.